So, like, La Tech and Baylor got postponed and probably canceled altogether. Baylor's going to play, I believe, Houston. Right, this Saturday. And then Kansas State gets embarrassed by Arkansas State. Iowa State, ranked, gets embarrassed by ULL. And then, of course, we watch, or I watched Coastal Carolina, the Chanticleers, just go cock-a-doodle-doo over the top of the Jayhawks. Goodness me, man. Like, how do you feel about this league?
Man, I don't feel good. To be blunt, I am not in a great standing with the conference right now. And you're talking to a guy who wrote thousands of words in a Big 12 preview and then circled right back. If you guys want to go check out the piece I wrote on OUinsider.com recapping some of my takeaways from the Big 12 conferences, pretty disappointing weekend. You should go give that a look. But, I mean, I'm kind of worried, RJ. I'm not going to lie. And I think kind of a point that I really want to expand on. It'd be interesting to get your take on this. I mean, there are a lot of people, especially in the Big 12, it seems like, that feel like these non-conference games really don't mean much. But I would argue now more than ever, they mean a ton. And I'm factoring in what I know about the College Football Playoff Committee and how much they value that extra data point. And how did you perform not only early on in the season, but how did you perform against other competitions that can be used as a comparison data point? And I think for the Big 12 to be that bad so early on against, honestly, some teams who, yes, they play in the Sun Belt or whatever, but those are some pretty decent football teams. For them to just not show up, I have to believe that's going to come back to bite the Big 12 and Oklahoma if it comes down to the nitty-gritty of solidifying that final playoff spot. I think Oklahoma may be in that difficult position where maybe now more than ever, the Big 12 just doesn't look strong. And it's going to be easier than ever before to put a second team from another conference in that Final Four format. And so I'm kind of sweating bullets if I'm in house for Oklahoma right now. I'm kind of hoping that Baylor, Oklahoma State show me something this weekend, and then these teams turn right around and put together some sort of performance that's encouraging, because right now OU is just kind of the standalone leader, and Texas had a really good showing, but it was against UTEP. So for the top two premier programs in the conference to play basically stinkers and then basically everyone else get dominated by the Sun Belt, I don't know, man. I mean, what do you think? Could this be something that Oklahoma kind of has to sweat?
Absolutely. Like, I got to talk with Heather Dinich on ESPN Radio, Game Night. Check me out with Jeff Dickerson on Saturday nights, recapping and reacting in real time to the games. And at the time, we're talking about the Big Ten and we're talking about the return to football or what that might look like, what has to happen. And I asked her straight up, is this the year that the Sun Belt or the American get in? And she said the American probably has a better chance than the Sun Belt does, in large part because we all know who Central Florida is. We know Memphis is good or could be good. We'll see how the COVID situation goes. We know that Cincy has an opportunity to be really great, and the problem that they're going to have is SMU is going to be really great. The problem we have, though, is the same one that the Big 12 has. You'll cannibalize each other, right? You got to play ranked teams to be worthy, and if you're beating up ranked teams, they're no longer ranked. That's an Iowa State problem, right? That's the reason that the Big 12 was getting such buzz is because Iowa State was a national sleeper for the college football playoff. As wild as that seems to say now, that's how it looked last week, right? And then you're looking at the ACC. You know who Clemson is, and people are just going to pencil them in. And if North Carolina were to run the table and lose to Clemson, they got a shot. Notre Dame is Notre Dame. They got a shot. And then I'm going to be stumping for the Sun Belt to keep doing this, man. Like, Appalachian State wants to smoke. They've only lost 2 games or 3 games in the last 3 years. They're all to Georgia Southern. So 2 to Georgia Southern, 1 to North Carolina. That's my bad. They beat Georgia Southern. They're going to run the table, right? And they'll get to face a team like ULL that went 11-3 last year. It was really good. Arkansas State gets pounced on by Memphis and then comes from behind to beat Kansas State. That is not a great look for the Big 12. I don't think that a Big 12 team gets in unless they go undefeated this year. I don't give a damn if it is Oklahoma and they lose to Texas, because you already have this data point to show, and every time we have these discussions throughout the year, we talk about Oklahoma because they close so strongly, right? They get the loss in October, and then they go undefeated in November, and then they demolish somebody in the Big 12 championship game. They get in. Last year, it was luck. Utah beats Oregon, they're in. They did not. Oregon doesn't lose to Auburn, they're in, right? You look at the Big Ten, right? Ohio State was going to get somebody in. If Wisconsin didn't lose to Illinois, they might have a shot to get in. And then you look at the SEC, and we know who the SEC is. And every time we have these discussions, the SEC is always at the top. And then you put two teams in, and that other team beat Oklahoma. So they justified themselves being there, and you get an SEC title game part 2 for the national championship game. No, I'm with you. I think this set back the Big 12. And if nothing else, I'm looking at it going, yeah, man, Oklahoma, Texas, y'all don't need this. Y'all don't need this. Take it to the SEC, baby. Just go. Along with Ohio State, Nebraska, Penn State, Michigan State. Maybe you want to include something like an Iowa or whatnot. But, like, my God, dude, I was pissed. Because I watched all of the Arkansas State-Kansas State game. I'm not a multi-screen type of dude. I want to be able to focus, and then I'll catch up on the rest. I'll try to pick the best game that I can or the one that I think is most important. Oklahoma's going to play Kansas State. Kansas State won 7 games last year and beat Oklahoma last year. That's the one that got my attention. I expected Iowa State to demolish Louisiana, and then I look up, and they lost by 17. What? Like, what are we doing? And then I'm on the radio talking about Clemson beating the hell out of Wake Forest, talking about Florida State being embarrassed by Georgia Tech, and the Chanticleers are destroying Kansas. And the Chanticleer players are on the sideline talking about they can't play with us. Holy smokes! What are we doing here? You paid them $200,000 to whip you, Jayhawks. Like, Iowa State paid Louisiana $350,000 they don't have to get beat by 17 points. And, of course, Arkansas State comes from behind, running a 2-quarterback system against Kansas State to not only beat them in Bill Snyder's family stadium, but to take his money, $550,000 of $500,000 to beat the hell out of you. No, to hell with this league, right? Because, like, Oklahoma gets a win against Missouri State. Big whoop. Texas beats up UTEP like they stole something. Big whoop. We got to depend on West Virginia to carry the banner of the Big 12 because they beat an Eastern Kentucky team that I can't trust to beat Davis, Oklahoma. All right? I don't trust them to beat Rhode Island Tech U. They're a 2-point underdog against that team. And then add to all of this, the SEC hasn't even played a snap yet, man. And they're still right there. I'm going, why? And on the one hand, we got football to watch. Cool. I'm past that part. You know? I'm on to, look, maybe none of y'all need to schedule Sun Belt teams ever again. Because I'm the dude looking at North Dakota State going, Alabama, give them a game. And Nick Saban's like, why? We got nothing to gain from that. Like, we beat them, we're supposed to beat them. They beat us, we're doomed. Because that's what happened to Kansas State. That's what happened to Iowa State. That's what happened to KU. You know, like even this this Houston Baylor game gives me the willies.
Hey, man, it almost happened to Texas Tech, didn't it, too?
Golly! Houston Baptist? Who the hell is Houston Baptist? 35-33 to Houston Baptist? Like, I love my man Gabe, right? I love Gabe Lynn, right? His wife, Nicole, went to law school at OU. I got to know her just a little bit. Now she's agent to the stars. Like, Jalen Hurts on the roster. Quentin Williams on the roster. Gabe Lynn coaching DBs out at Houston Baptist. And yet, I looked at that score, and they're like, yo, man, Alan Bowman threw for all the yards. But it was a 2-point game! What? Like, all right, you saw Houston Baptist play North Texas. Are they that good?
So let me tell you something, man. That Bailey Zappi kid at quarterback for the Huskies, I can tell you right now, he can ball. I wrote down he would easily be one of the best G5 quarterbacks in the country. And he'd probably be an upgraded quarterback for a lot of Power 5 programs, i.e. Kansas or Wake Forest. But let me tell you something, man. I mean, North Texas put up 57 points on Texas Tech for a reason. That's a bad defensive squad. And he doesn't have much of an offensive line. He's got a couple of receivers, so I wasn't too surprised by some of the offensive production. But for Texas Tech to not only give up that point total, but also to barely score any points, that's bad, man. Like, I'm here to tell you, that's really bad. And I'm a guy who would probably advocate for Houston Baptist in those situations. That was another just rough look for the Big 12.
And I feel like that's what it's going to be, right? Because now, let's say Oklahoma goes and drops 50 on Kansas State's skull and Kansas State scores 20. It's not a good win anymore, right? And that's how I feel about the Iowa State game that's going to come up. And thank God that Texas actually decided it wanted to destroy UTEP. But outside of that, like, what worries me most is that this is the most talented Texas team that I've seen since 2009, right? If they stay healthy and if the schemes actually work, they're going to be good, right? And that OU Texas game is going to be the best game on the calendar for anybody. But what really we haven't discussed, because we haven't had an opportunity to discuss it, is what the hell are we going to do with Texas Christian? Because they're not going to, I don't think they're going to play a non-conference game at this particular juncture. And while they have J.D. Spielman, and they have Marcel Brooks, and they have Zach Evans, they ain't got a quarterback. Like, it went from Max Duggan might be the guy, Matthew Baldwin might be the guy, to, no, Max Duggan is out indefinitely, and Matthew Downing hasn't done anything in 10 days. To which Gary Patterson actually used his Twitter for good yesterday to say, hey, look, we started practicing in July. We got to be ready for September 26th. Don't worry about it. Well, I'm worried about it, Gary. I'm worried about it because I've seen your quarterback play. Okay? And I got to depend on y'all to be worth a damn. Come Oklahoma State, come Iowa State, come Texas Tech or whatever, right? Because Oklahoma State's another team that just hasn't played yet. And I got to throw my man Reggie Bush under the bus here. He picked Oklahoma State to make the college football playoff. That's a dude from California. That's all I got. That's all I can come up with. Because he basically neglects to think about, Mike Gundy damn near lost his job over the summer because they didn't lose his job because they didn't have enough money to buy him out. It's a program that is demoralized. It's a program where they've cut everybody's salaries. And then they went to the coaches and said, hey, would you guys take a 15% pay cut? And 9 of them said no? What? You got guys making $800,000 a year and they said no? And then the obvious question was asked, why the hell did y'all give them a choice? So you have all of that going around that Oklahoma State program. And if Tulsa actually can get a defensive rush going and can do something about Chuba Hubbard, they're in that game this weekend. Again, it's an OU Texas league. And I feel like it'd be better if Oklahoma and Texas were independents right now. That's where I'm at right now. I'm desperately wanting to blow up the Big 12. Do you want to blow up the Big 12 or you want to see it play out?
I'm kind of there with you. I'm not going to lie. I was all in on the Big 12 this year. I thought there was a chance for some of the most parity in the conference that we've seen in the past few seasons. And then, of course, this weekend happened. And I'm not really feeling that all much. But at the same time, I don't know what's going to take place in the next few weeks. I don't know if it's the COVID offseason to blame. I just don't know if these teams are not as good as we hyped them up to be. I think Oklahoma and Texas are going to have to understand they're going to have to do what they normally have to do and carry this conference on their shoulders and then hope for the best come college football playoff decision day. I think I'm not going to put it past TCU to be a real driver. And I mean, man, how much would the Big 12 have benefited if TCU and SMU were to play that football game? Even if TCU doesn't win, I mean, at least seeing the conference maybe put together a close football game against a verifiable and reputation-based program probably would have benefited a ton. But who knows? I really just don't know what to make of this conference right now. I would be all for a teardown and restart. It's just you play with the cards that you're dealt. And I think Oklahoma and Texas have some really great talent on their rosters. Texas is already facing some injury issues, and obviously Oklahoma probably played the worst opponent of the entire conference this weekend. But it's still going to be those two programs at the top, and at the end of it all, I mean, I think that there's going to have to be some serious reflection if this thing pans out the way that this past weekend indicates.